Hello everyone and welcome back to Alpine Odyssey. It's been a little while since we've made a episode here on the channel. Not only was I out of town last weekend, so you guys didn't get a stream, but also it is taking me a lot of, I guess, time and planning for what we've been kind of working on with the ziggurat. I'm really winging this. And I don't know what I'm doing. Do I ever really know what I'm doing on Planet Coaster? I don't think so. I think every day I just come home and like, let's build something. And then we build it. Whatever it might be. Whether it be a parking lot or a ziggurat or a windmill. We just build things here. So we are going to start by working on the main terrain feature here next to the log flume. And this is a big space kind of support for this floating raised track section. And the best thing to do when you are working on terrain like this, for me at least, is to build out the roots and the main crevices and valleys of these large terrain features. And then what I do is go in with a flatten tool and kind of just rough it up, make it look eroded, like there's, you know, things biting into the terrain in odd ways. And then you just kind of get a little bit more of a naturalistic shape. You get a little bit more of a rough shape too. You know, nothing is perfectly smooth, especially in nature. And you'll see that we are adding some fence work. The fence work is because we don't want Alpine Odyssey 1 to be an easily accessible place by outsiders without actually having to pay a ticket. You know, we are in it for the profit. It's been 100 some years in the making, and I tell you, we need every ticket sold. At this rate, it might be finished by the time Star Citizen gets done. But obviously, we want enough room back there to have a proper backstage and some maintenance roads going along. So that's what the double fence is for as well. Main thing about this episode is we're working on the back side of the ziggurat here. We're going to work on grounding this down. We're going to work on some of the supports on this upper track. Not a crazy amount. I still not quite sold on exactly what I want to do for this and how I even want to tie the upper area into the building itself. So we're just mainly focusing on the lower bits, though I do finish some sort of decoration here, which I'll talk about in a second. The main thing, though, is the Splashdown Zone down here is around this crash biplane. The crash biplane, of course, is something that we've been talking about for probably over a month and wanting to do. It was, of course, a community idea, like most of the park here for us. So if you guys have ideas and comments, let me know down below, and we'll see about adding that into the park. A lot of standard kind of building procedure here. Not a crazy amount to talk about that you guys probably haven't heard in every single episode. I am putting parts together to make an interesting and somewhat detailed upper railing there. And then eventually, when I actually figure out what I want to do with the upper section, I'll try and tie that into that kind of windowed border. And we'll go from there. We are adding these large stone pillars, and these are made up of multiple windows and also the keystone blocks. Now, these are interesting because in my mind, the keystone blocks would have been the final finished stone work, kind of covering up a lot of these pillars to make it look nice. But a lot of the time in masonry work, when you kind of get stonework being eroded, or maybe kind of the top layers getting revealed, it might be a little bit more filler material in there, and so that's what the other windows are trying to provide there. A little bit of texture that's beneath this stonework, and it's being revealed now that it's a little bit older and aged and eroded like that. So with the color palette on that is simply lighter colors on the farthest side away from the wall. That way, you know, those are the more exposed surfaces. So that's what we use for the keystone kind of cornerstone blocks there. The other little window details, those are kind of a mid-tone, and then the back windows are colored the darkest so that they kind of recess in there, and you know, they hold dirt in there. It's very much the same method as like dry brushing on a model. You know, for like a tabletop game or anything that you're really want to show wear and tear, you kind of dry brush in this dark color, and then you wipe most of it off, but it stays in those nooks and crannies like it's been kind of aged and collecting a whole bunch of grime. Other than that, little structures here and there, and of course the magic of shrubs and trees to fill in and add a whole bunch of detail without a crazy amount of effort. And you know, that is of course something that we're going to be doing a lot in Alpine Odyssey. It's such a big park, and that it becomes a almost a hassle to think about detailing, and then you're just like, oh, I'll just throw in some trees, cover all that up, and now it's perfectly detailed, and I don't have to worry about telling a story there. We are using a lot of the same tile sets from before. Some of you might be wondering why, and not just making some new, shinier details for a couple reasons. One, it makes this go a little bit quicker, and for my sanity, I think that would be nice. And two, it also ties the other side of the park in with this back section, so they don't look so segmented, and they don't look like they don't belong together. When you start taking details from one section and throwing it into the other, you kind of start making it a uniform, and then the differences become more of a variation than a new section completely. And you know, that's the goal when I do these tile sets. I use these tile sets as rough guides, and then we add variation with them, or maybe we make a new tile set completely, and then maybe take elements from one and another and mash them together to make something new. You know, these are the things that you do to one, make it quicker on yourself, and to make it quicker on yourself. That's the main reason you do tile sets. You know, otherwise everything would just be hand placed and everything would be perfect, the whole 9 yards. But I don't think anyone has the 200 years it would take to do such a feat, or the patience. The lower section of the ziggurat, we are going to be doing this kind of staggered roof design, very similar to what we did on the front side. And this is, you know, just the wear and tear of the actual building itself. You can kind of offset these at different heights and angles in different sections of the grid to make a lot of variation of just solid stone masonry work. And then you can even offset the walls. You can see the section in the middle there. That wall is off on a different grid line on the other side, but it still kind of, you know, makes a wall and blocks the light going through. But it adds that extra lip, and that extra lip can be a little bit of a free detail without you really having to add anything besides just the wall piece itself. You know, building up layers is something that I enjoy doing a lot in Planet Coaster, and something I'm really happy that we can do in Planet Coaster. It's one of those creative games that it's just mind-boggling what you can create in this game, to be honest. It's basically a 3D modeling program at this point, or at least that's how I treat it. Our Crash Biplane is, of course, the main attraction down here on the back side. It is the most unique feature. You know, it's pretty rare to see a biplane in Aztec kind of area, but you know, I thought it would be cool. It's a little bit of an Easter egg type of thing, though it is part of a ride. And you know, we just split the tail in half. We crashed and folded in one of the wing tips and made that blend into the terrain. Added some exposed rock behind as if it kind of crashed and skid to a stop there. Some of those trees are kind of actually pulled away a little bit, almost like they were hit, and then they kind of just settled at that angle, and then they kind of flourished around the plane itself. And that stark red color, just you know, in the middle of all this green and yellows, is very eye-catching. It just kind of pops out at you, especially since it reflects the light in such a interesting way compared to maybe the dull grays and the dull reds that the ziggurat has. So I'm pretty happy with the idea that we, you know, wanted a crash biplane in general in this area. Now we're adding rocks, and of course this is pretty much the same technique that I do with most of my foliage. The first layer is, of course, you know, some height terrain differences using the train tool, and then you paint in some terrain color differences, you know, some more dirt colors where you want the shrubs to be rock colors on more kind of cliff edges, and grasses kind of to break those areas up so they don't feel too busy. And then you add the exposed kind of rock layer, which is what the kind of rock scenery pieces are used for, and that creates a break from just the flat kind of voxel surface of Planet Coaster, and then it starts making it kind of a little bit more 3D, your low bushes into your high trees. You'll also notice that even though we're kind of in the Aztec Mayan area, I don't use a crazy amount of palm trees. I use a lot more broadleaves, and then just strategically place groupings of palm trees around. For me, that makes the palm trees stand out a lot more than if I just use them everywhere. If I use them everywhere, they wouldn't be a special piece anymore. They would be more of a constant backdrop, and I think that would be a little bit boring. And it also, I think, the other trees are used more like shrubs than actual trees themselves, and you'll see me sink a lot of trees and just use maybe the upper third as a shrub. Now that's kind of an old habit. We do have shrubs now, though not as much as I would like. Just a little bit of a nitpick there for Planet Coaster. And we are continuing to grab a lot of these same pieces that we've been using elsewhere in the park, right? They use destroyed walls, destroyed columns, pillars, sections from the front side where it's getting a little bit worn down and discolored, and some of the pieces are now kind of collecting on the lower rungs of the ziggurat. And this is going back to, you know, that uniformity, bringing sections and details from other areas and how they work across and kind of help each other out, tell a story. And it's just pretty much of the same as the last episode. This kind of stuff just takes time to do. There is a little bit of a thought process that goes into this, right? You know, you want to know kind of, well, what type of facade is this? If this peeled away off the surface, how would it land and collect on the layers below? Would it break up into smaller pieces? Would it hold its shape? How durable is it? Would the smaller pieces even remain, and maybe only the bigger pieces remain? These are the type of questions you kind of have to ask yourself when you're building ruins, or really a lot of structures in general. It's always good to think about how it interacts with everything around it. That way it makes sense in the space and proceeds to tell a believable story. Again, we go with believability here, not quite with 100% realism, because really this is a completely over-the-top build. I don't even think any theme park would build anything like Alpine Odyssey. It's way too expensive. It's probably way too detailed and necessary. No one will probably see this. The only reason we have to go into this much detail in Planet Coaster is just because people can fly around. They can zoom in to every nook and cranny if they want to, and start seeing if there's missing details. You don't really get that luxury in real life. Everything's always from the path view, and that's it, unless you have a drone or something. But not everyone's casing nice that. Anyways, with that, we are pretty much done with today's speed build. We're gonna go ahead, kick it over to real time, and we'll get to see some slow shots of it, and then we'll call this episode done. Alright, so here we are, taking a look at the lower section here, and then we'll take a look at other plans and stuff. Also, I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about Alpine Odyssey. We are, of course, finishing up the Aztec area, hopefully soon, by the end of this month or so. And after that, of course, we'll be working on the backstage areas. But I think after I finish up the Aztec area, at least all the exterior work here, at that point, we are going to be shifting to live streams only for Planet Coaster for a while. One, to me, they're more enjoyable to actually work on. They're a little bit more freeform. You guys give me some great ideas and inspiration kind of on the spot, and so I want to kind of go down that route for a while with Planet Coaster and kind of stop making videos on it. Of course, there'll be VODs like normal, but for the meantime, this actually might be the last video, and you guys might get a whole bunch of streams here for a while. Other than that, we can, I guess, talk about the actual park itself here. We have a flaming biplane. Well, that's cool. Don't worry, it is fake fire and a fake smoke and all that. Well, I guess it's technically real smoke. Just an effect. Don't worry, we're not going to burn down the trees or anything like that. So we have a crashed plane here, kind of skidded to a stop at what seems to be after colliding into a little bit of a ditch, hitting some of these trees out of the way, and leaving a little bit of a trail of rocks behind that. And we got our first little drop for the log flume in this area, right? So they're just going to come down here, see this for a second or so, and then work their way back inside. Don't know what the inside interior is still going to be like at all. We have the ruined look, kind of this lower support structure from the actual main ziggurat itself, and it's looking good. I'm liking it. It's looking grounded. It's looking like it's actually taking up and sitting on some proper ground and space, unlike it actually is just floating here. Like if we go inside of it, you can see it's all just a floating shell. But from the outside, it doesn't look like that, and I think at least we're succeeding on that front. We have just trees and shrubs. A bunch of trees and shrubs, a bunch of cool little details going along through here. Nothing to really focus on or talk about too much in depth. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit more of a close look that you might not get to see during a lot of the speed build. The speed build does move relatively quick, and it moves across multiple areas. So a lot of that is it's just nice to kind of slow it down a little bit, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I know I get a little rambly in these videos sometimes, so I apologize. Right, so all we need to do, we have this little corner to work on the exterior still, and this will kind of tie in that. We have this exterior kind of train tunnel exit and entryway to do. And then from there, the ziggurat is basically done exterior-wise. So hopefully we'll get that done here over the next few live streams. And of course, we'll be continuing working on these interiors that we've been doing live streaming as well. For those of you who do miss the live streams, I do want to cover, we are working on our staff room. We made our first lockers, and they look lovely. You know, we even have a little kind of command console so you can get your keys and stuff, and I'm happy to use the sequencer tool so we can get a little bit of a menu and stuff like that. I built an overly detailed pool table, completely overly detailed, but you know what, I love it, and hopefully you guys do as well, and we'll just be continuing this on this weekend and stuff. So that's pretty much where we're going to leave it on this episode of Alpine Odyssey. So until then, I'll leave you guys with a couple kind of atmospheric shots, you could say. And if you guys enjoy the stuff, feel free to subscribe to my channel for more creative goodness. Go ahead and hit that like button. Leave a comment down below, and I will see you all in the next video.